artificial intelligence is really going to be about data. And so when we talk about what the impact is, I think it's really taking a lot of time for companies to look into internally and figure out how they collect better data about themselves. Right, all of this amazing computing power that we have today is irrelevant if they can't make sense of the data that they're putting into it. And so I think the impact is going to be speed and capabilities, but that first thing is going to be that introspection, getting good data out of out of the company itself.
You're absolutely right. Data is going to be the driving factor. It's about three elements when you think of the data. Um, how are we dealing with the data privacy? How are we dealing with data mobility? And how are we dealing with data proximity? Those three questions, and frankly, transparency or traceability when it comes to AI. When institutions are utilizing AI to drive analytics for internal consumption, traceability becomes less of an issue. When they're utilizing that AI to drive reportable or regulatory centric analytics, then traceability becomes critical, right? And so the traceability factor is important. On the proximity and privacy standpoint, once again, we need to ensure that infrastructure, operational environments are set up in such a way that we aren't inadvertently exposing data in a manner we don't want to.
Yeah, actually, you know what? And building on top of that a little bit too. I mean, when we talk about IT infrastructure impact, right? Like a obviously compute power and what you get out of major players like Rackspace, where you can partner with us to build out your compute infrastructure to run your workloads. A big factor is storage, right? I mean, all of this data it requires massive amounts of storage, and so if you're really like trying to differentiate what the difference between somebody with their RTX 4090 sitting at home trying to crunch numbers versus what we can do inside of a data center, it really is the breadth of scale, and when it comes to not only compute capabilities, but also the storage at scale, like what you're going to do with that data, how you replicate it, and then all of the layers of security and compliance, and traceability come on top of that, and it goes from like megabytes to petabytes in almost like a blink of an eye. So
Well,
yeah, that
especially when you think of the complexity of the models. So the
yeah,
model training of your models, inference and fine tuning further exacerbate that. It's
totally.
really it's amazing how all of these layers build on top of one another. Edge allows institutions to provide a mechanism that looks at the manner in which they treat downstream dependencies. So Edge adjusts for latency, Edge adjusts for complexity, and Edge adjusts for contingency or dependencies. I think what you'll see is institutions are balancing between on-prem, recognizing they want the value and benefit that cloud can provide, but they're concerned about the potential exposure. Edge gives them the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. And I think Edge is, has evolved over the years to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I think we are getting more clarity on what Edge actually ends up being, when it grows up. But it's when we're talking about edge computing, it could be a factory, right? And that's where that exposure comes in. I mean, it could also be a forward operating base, a cell tower. Like edge computing could be anything that brings your compute capabilities, your data, your workloads, your workload centric environments closer to the consumers or end users of those environments. And so, yeah, I think edge computing is going to it has a lot of impact in 2024. I think it's had a ton of impact over the last decade, and I think it's going to continue to evolve, especially when we look into the accelerated computing platforms that are coming online today.
Yeah, I mean, again, to me, the biggest comment there is edge isn't what you historically felt edge was,
Yeah,
right? The definition of edge has changed in terms of the type of appliance. What it is, how it can be utilized is no longer regulated to an appliance stuck off in a data center somewhere, right?
totally.
That's the biggest advancement that edge has made is it's not the same.
OpenStack has had a lot of advancements over the years, and while it's not just it's well, we can focus on compute capabilities, and there's a lot of stuff that's happened there recently, scheduling around vGPUs, accelerators, improving stability and everything else. But there's also a lot of different ancillary services or extra services that are around OpenStack. I mean, it's hundreds or even maybe even thousands of projects that kind of all come together to encompass OpenStack. And so I think the major advancement that you've had over the last couple of years is the stability around those projects, all of the projects, not just compute and virtualization. So, I mean, while, compute and neutron or networking and our UI experience and identity and all of those things have had a lot of great advancements. I think the major advancement is the stability across the platform and the fact that it is really an enterprise platform. It is not a tinker toy. It is not a science project. It is an open source ecosystem for managing resources at scale that enterprises, large and small, whether they're wanting to run, three nodes sitting behind them here on the webinar, or they're doing it at massive scale inside of a data center. OpenStack serves all of those different purposes and has the ability to do it really, really well. And so I think when we're talking about what are the major advantages or advancements in the platform over the last couple of years, while compute is definitely at the centric, the virtualization is definitely at the center of a lot of that. It really is just the stability across the larger ecosystem and platform.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say to me, number one is that it is a platform, right? It's not a product offering. It's a platform comprised of a vast array of capabilities, whether it be through virtualization or as a result of microservices. It is a mechanism or a platform that enables a tremendous amount of flexibility that allows institutions to engage in re-architecting the manner in which they think through these questions, as opposed to being streamed into predefined channels. And I think that's one of the biggest advancements that OpenStack brings to the table.
Totally agree. And I'll highlight the fact that, the Open Infra Foundation, right, identified this early on in, a bunch of years ago and started working with other, some would say competitive organizations or foundations, but also, complementary to make sure that the OpenStack platform works well in those ecosystems. I think the stat there is that like 80% of organizations are running Kubernetes on top of OpenStack because they need that infrastructure at scale. They need that layer to virtualize that workloads or create easy operations inside of those networks or attach accelerators to it. But also, they just want a different developer experience with an enterprise ready infrastructure experience. And so administrators are really the benefit of those advancements.
It's the flexibility and breadth that it delivers. It's the ability to examine multiple attributes across the architectural plane, as opposed to having a predefined set of cloud native tooling. And so it really gives you much broader capabilities administratively, from a development perspective, and from an overall growth and management perspective.
I can, yeah. I mean, we won't go into the customer specifics, but I mean, large scale operations. I mean, we can take a look at ourselves at Rackspace, right? We've been running OpenStack in production since 2012, and we've been doing it across 7 data centers worldwide, servicing tens of thousands of customers and hundreds of thousands of virtual machines. And so, when we're talking about large scale enterprises running OpenStack, like, we could probably write the case study on ourselves here. But also, you can look across the globe and look at almost all of the major telecommunications companies are running some form of OpenStack. We have commitments from Microsoft and AMD who are running forms of OpenStack. We have commitments from the Open Compute Foundation who are participating in OpenStack, and those organizations are serving business, financial sectors, business intelligence, the telecommunications markets, and a lot of the accelerated workloads that are happening in some of the supercomputer spaces are focused on OpenStack. Going back to like scientific engagement in OpenStack, CERN is running OpenStack, which is powering the Large Hadron Collider, right? So I think there are countless examples of enterprises running OpenStack at major scale. I think the big takeaway from a lot of those improvements in OpenStack today is that there are actually a lot of smaller organizations who are running edge computing or running a hyper converged environments in OpenStack as well. And I think some of maybe there's not enough notoriety in some of those deployments and capabilities there, but it really just shows the breadth of scale.
So from an infrastructure perspective, I think autonomous tooling now is proliferating across all facets of an environment or a state. Autonomous tooling from a data perspective, from a database perspective, from an administration perspective, from a monitoring perspective. Um, it's it is here, and it is only going to increase. And I think what institutions need to be considering, organizations need to be considering is, are you structured in such a way that you're taking advantage of the efficiency that this is going to drive? Have you ensured that your architecture is sufficiently open or sufficiently flexible to be able to take advantages of the tooling that is going to be available to you? Because that's where you're going to see the efficiency gains. That's where you're going to be able to see reallocation of resources into other elements and utilize the entire labor minus model or automation to drive the enhanced capabilities. It will increase your consistency. It will improve response time, and it will frankly provide you with a hedge in terms of preemptive action. Right. So AI thinks of it three ways when you go through this kind of thing. AI, from an autonomous tooling perspective, can say, "Hey, I'm just informing you that there's a problem. You need to go and take care of it." Or, "Hey, letting you know this problem existed, and I took care of it." So that's an advise, act, and inform, right? So there's inform, there's act and inform, and then there is here's a problem. Here's the three ways in which I can fix it. What do you want me to do? Right? Which is again how I see all of this playing out. Kevin, I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that.
No, I totally agree. And I think it goes back to what we talked about already about, the data and AI and being able to, leverage some of those features and functions of modern computing right now, right? Which all boils down into trust, right? So you have to be able to present your data in a way that makes sense for to get those outcomes that you're looking for, but also, be able to the enterprise be able to trust the outcomes that is presenting. And so, yeah, it's a gradual, it's like it's that, crawl, walk, run approach, right? In terms of adopting autonomous tooling. And it's not about whether or not businesses are ready for it. It's coming. And then it's either going to come in shadow IT, or it's going to come through, the acknowledgement that it is happening, and we're, being present and participating in it. Because, people are going to try to solve problems with a lot of these tools. And if you don't adopt those tools in a consistent way, then it will end up being that shadow IT behind the scenes, which, then leads us back to again what we were talking about. Being able to that traceability of your data, the compliance of your data, securing your data. So you either you adopt it in a way that makes sense for your organization, or it gets adopted on the back end by your administrators or your operations staff.
Autonomous tooling really falls into three categories: advise, inform, and evaluate. From an advise perspective, autonomous tooling says, I've taken care of this problem, right? Sorry, let me start. Advise, inform, evaluate. Advise says, I've monitored and here's a problem that you need to fix. Inform says, found the issue, fixed the issue, letting you know I fixed the issue. And evaluate says, found the issue, determine that these are the ways in which we can fix the issue. You tell me what you want me to do, right? And so that's how it breaks into the whole advise, inform, evaluate. And depending on the sophistication of your organization and depending on the manner in which you want to either rely on your AI or leverage AI, that's how you're going to end up seeing autonomous tooling continue to proliferate.
Over the last year, operational resilience has taken a lot of forms, and the reason being is because it is more true today that it has more to do with business continuity than anything else, right? People are reacting to changes in the market and trying to figure out what they're going to do next and how they can continue to afford to operate, efficiently and at scale, or in a way that they need to. And so, the operational resilience is really about trying to figure out how they continue doing more with the finite budget that they have.
So the question is, how does
'Cause
operational resiliency, how does AI affect operational resiliency? And I think you really have to look at that from two sides of that question. Firstly, defining what operational resiliency is today, because it's not the same. And it really looks at all facets of the business because ultimately, are you trying to drive consistency, continuity,
Right.
redundancy, repeatability? What do you define as operational resiliency? Because it means so many different things to so many people. So,
Right.
firstly, identify what definition of operational resiliency you want to address. Then the question is, where can you effectively utilize AI to support that? Because the watchword for me here is not everything is solved by AI, right? AI is a tool. It helps you. It's tremendous, but it's not going to replace everything. So ultimately, there is managed oversight and there is AI in terms of driving efficacy around operational resiliency.
Yeah, and you know, to build on that, right? I mean, we might be dating ourselves here, but it was a BlackBerry quote, and it was, operational resiliency refers to the ability to recover from hazards, right, and disruptive events.
Yeah.
And you have topics like what's going on with the CrowdStrike issues. You had hacks here or ransomware over there, or even just the inability for companies to leverage the compute powers that they need, right? And so all of this resiliency comes into, or all of these factors come into play on how you build your own operational resiliency. And I totally agree with Prince's that AI is an important tool, but there's a human factor that needs to be accounted for, even in this autonomous tooling, artificial intelligence reality that we're finding ourselves moving into. We need to be able to build out the ability to withstand impact from some of those tools.
Yeah. The tooling
Yeah,
itself is a vulnerability.
correct.
So,
Yeah, it creates a new vector that companies need to wrangle, right? And so yeah, it creates a new vector that companies need to wrangle. And to harken back to what we were saying before, right? Autonomous tooling is coming, and so it's either you adopt it with an open eyes or you get it through that shadow ID. And so I feel like people need to, well, I'll leave it there. Or you get it through
yeah.
that
No,
shadow
it's
ID.
interesting, right, when
Yeah,
you're saying the shadow IT because it's
yeah,
embedded. It's
it's
embedded in
embedded. Yeah,
so many tools today. And whether
totally.
you realize it and are optimizing it or are unaware and it's actually permeating what's taking place, you
Yeah.
really have to have your eyes open so that you're getting the best benefit and advantage of it and maintaining safeguards against becoming lazy and allowing it to ultimately create vulnerabilities that you weren't expecting.